Hi everyone, and welcome to this tutorial in which we are going to see how to make a virtual scroller, which is a way to make items really fast. So what do I have in here? In here I simply created a new app using MPX and the Create React app, and I just started it. So all I have in here is a simple is the sample React app that we usually see. Now we're not going to need all of those items in here, so I'm going to delete a bunch of files. We don't need the logo. We're just going to make a very simple app. Okay, we're going to keep app. We're going to keep this one. We will actually need it. So let's of course logo is not here anymore, app is not here anymore, and the editor is complaining. So let's see if everything is okay. Yeah, everything is fine, so our app is empty. What are we going to build? We're going to build a list of a large number of items, and this large number of items is going to populate our application. We're going to make 100,000 elements which are going to be scrollable, and those scrollable elements are going to be a bottleneck for our application because of the large number. So the first thing we need to make is a new file in which we're going to generate this amount of fake data. So I'm going to make a util folder, util.ps file, and maybe for this project I'm going to use a faker. So npm install faker. Faker is simply a library that allows us Faker is a library that essentially just allows us to generate exactly fake data. The way you use it is a faker dot random. Okay, so it's missing maybe some dependencies. Yeah, npm save. This way we are going to get the TypeScript IntelliSense to work better. So faker dot random dot number, and yeah, we can give it a maximum number, which is for example 255. Alright, so we're going to generate an item. So I'm going to make an item which has 3 sections. So it's going to have an ID, it's going to have some content, and it's going to have a little square with a color maybe. So const generate item is equal to function which returns an object, and this object has a color, and the color is random color. So random color, we're going to define const random color. The way we can do this, it's RGB. We can do it as an RGB number, which of course is made by colors. So let's do also a const random RGB number, so which is essentially just a number between 0 and 255. So math.floor, math.random. Well, could have used faker for this, but it's alright. Random RGB number, and of course this one repeated 3 times. It's going to give us a random color. And we need a content, and for this one we're gonna use faker random words, and then we need an ID, so we're gonna use faker random UUID, and that's it. Now we need to generate this data, so we need to actually export this function. So we do export constant generate item, and now in app.tsx what we're going to do is simply gonna do an array from length, for example 100, just to test this out, map element, and then we return generate item. So let's see if this one works. We should have, of course not, because we need to create actually elements. Let's do this way then. Generate data. We give a length, which is a number. And now with this length, what we're going to do, we're going to do array.from length.map, and all we're going to do is to return an object. Well, actually what we can do is simply return generate item. Okay, so now we have generate data. So we have generate data dot map. So we have a list of objects. So we have an element, and now we return for each of those elements a div, which key is going to be e.id. Inside here can have a style. Maybe I'm gonna change this style later on, but for now, just to check if it works, we're gonna set the background to e.color. Yeah, something is missing. Generate item is not necessary anymore. Map does not exist. Oh. Okay, so here I put the parentheses, so I was not actually returning any value. I'm gonna make the code a little bit larger so that it's easier to be seen. Alright, so we have generate data, and now we have a random color, and here we have e.content. Looks super ugly, but it looks like it's working. Alright, so the next part of our element, what is it? It's the fact that we want to have a certain number of elements. So each one of those elements, if we're gonna put, instead of a 100, we're gonna put, let's say, how many of these? 10,000 elements. Our browser starts to suffer, and if we go to 100,000 elements, things are even worse. So the render, it's very slow. You see the browser can't really catch up easily, and of course that's not what we want. So what we want to add an element which we call a virtual scroller. And the virtual scroller, what is it? It's an element that is going to display only a subset of the data. I think I froze the browser. Okay. So a virtual scroller is an element that is going to generate our data and is going to display this data one by one. So we're going to make a new file inside util. We're going to create a new file. We're going to call it components. It's going to be a virtual scroller. It's going to be a React component. And what are those elements going to be? So let's do a very basic virtual scroller to start with. We want to see only a subset of the items. So what is the idea of a virtual scroller? It's a component that is going to receive all of our data and is going to display this data. However, it's going to display the data in sections. So it's not going to display all of the data at once, but it's going to display the data in blocks. So what do we want the virtual scroller to receive? We want the virtual scroller to receive data, and this data is in the size of a util. So we can have our model folder. So we can have model index.ts export interface. What do we call it? Tag, iTag. And this one is composed by, let's see, it's composed by color, content, and ID. So I'm going to copy those items. Color, which is a string. And the ID that is as well a string. So the virtual scroller receives data, which is in the format of an I tag. So receives the data. What else do we need? Well, right now we don't really need anything. We just need a component that receives data, and then it's going to visualize the data. I'm thinking that maybe we might want to have an element that displays each row. Each row of data is an element that we can pass through from the from up. So essentially this element here is a row, that gets passed through. I'm building it as it goes, so you will forgive me if I make some mistakes, if I change my mind once I start actually making it. So this is the row, and how is the element? Well, let's see, the element is going to have three we need to have the whole data, the row, and now we're going to have a div that contains so the idea is that we're going to have three divs. This is a div, which is where we're going to have the on scroll. For now, just an empty function. Then we're going to have another div that is our going to have a class name of top padding element. Then in here we're going to have a slice of data in which we visualize the row. So in here we have a div current set of elements, which is going to contain the items, the slice of the items. So it's going to be, for example, the items from slice from 10 to 50 as an example. And then we're going to have a div of class name bottom padding element. So how this is going to work: when this one is the starting position, this div in here, it's a bit like saying the style is that the padding top is going to be 0 because we are at the top of the element, while the top bottom element is going to have a padding bottom. Well, actually, it's not going to have a height. It's going to have a height of 0, and this one is going to have a height which is equal to items dot length multiplied by row height. Then maybe it's an element we need in here. Data. So this one is data dot length row height that of course it's an array. And we have row height, and in here we're going to have the slice of the elements that are going to change as we scroll through the element. So we have these three elements: data, row, and row height. So this one we said it's the row, so we can do virtual scroller, and we said we have data that is equal to generate data, then we have, what did I call it, row. We have row which is equal to this element, yeah. So we need to actually, we can just pass it through. Well, actually I could do this. We have E, which is of type I tag, and then we have I, that is a number, this one is complaining. find tag already. This one is wrong. All of this is not necessary anymore. Let's do format, and then we need a row height that, let's say, is going to be 30 pixels for each element. So virtual scroller is here, and what is going to happen is that we need to have data dot slice the height is data dot length is actually data dot length minus the currently visualized data, which in this case is 40 rows. Should have pixel. So if we go on our virtual scroller, what's happening? Oh well, actually, rather than data.slice, we can actually dot map row. Row, yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So now, what we are displaying the element, and the scroll is exactly what we are needing right now. Now, if we increase the number of elements, so if we do exactly like before, we put 100,000 elements. We should get an element that is really high. However, it should not freeze the page. And now all is left to do, it is the fact that we want to make the scroller to work accordingly. And then we're gonna also fix the style and do other things. However, the first thing we wanna do, it is to create this element and dynamically change this height here and this height in here, because of course data to length minus 40, but then we also have to subtract the height from this element at the top. Alrighty, so the first thing we want to calculate is to calculate the viewport height. And what is the viewport height? It's the total height of the visible part of the viewport, which is what we want actually to show to our users. So we have a constant viewport height, which is equal to the number of items we want to visualize. Let's say 15 elements multiplied by row height. So what is this one? Is the height of the visible portion of data. The next thing we need is the total height is the total height of the visualized items total height, which is going to be row height, and it's going to be multiplied the amount of data the amount of data okay. Then the next thing we want total height and viewport height. Then we want to have some variables which are, we need to set the top height, which is this element here, and the bottom height, which is this element in here. So for the top height, we're going to use state padding height set padding. Use state well, I'm actually thinking if this data if maybe this should be set by 3 elements. So I'm actually thinking about using an object that does top, which is a number, bottom, which is a number, and view data, which is the slice of the data. Is what I'm thinking that might be the best way to achieve it. So we have a top height, so this one would be padding height dot top. The element at the bottom is going to be padding height dot bottom, and then the view data is going to substitute this section. Of course, the name padding height at this stage doesn't make any more sense, because I initially thought about making a number for each one of these variables, top, bottom, view data, but maybe it's not making a lot of sense right now. Alright, so how do we initialize those values? So let's move all of this into an interface, in the local interface for this, and then we have top is calculated as the number of elements, let's do this way, number of elements above the viewport. So items above multiplied by row height. Then we have bottom, which right now is set as data.length by row height, but it actually should be number of elements below number of initialized So the number of elements visualized minus current number of elements in the screen, well, which actually something, so it's actually the number of elements visualized minus items above all of this multiplied by row height. And then we have the view data, which is an array of elements, and this is going to be the slice according to the number of elements that we have. So let's start with calculating the top number. So number of elements above. So number of elements above is going to be number of elements above is going to be so at this point what we want to do, we want to calculate those three numbers, top, bottom, and view data. The initial value for the top, assuming that our list is going to be at the top, is going to be 0. The bottom size is going to be data.length by row high minus, of course, this one we need to remove the currently visualized item. So maybe we can actually use the two variables that we defined just above, which is total height minus view port height. And view data is this is we can initialize it as the data dot slice 0. So we start from the 0 position to let's say the first 15 rows. Let's put this one inside a variable, so we can call it const amount, which is number of rows. So right now nothing should be changed, we should just see the elements at the beginning, and there should be 15 elements. I want to make another edit to our file to ensure that those items, since in here we have the number, we want to do want to display which number of the row we are. Well, actually this one wouldn't actually work because we need to have another elements in our util. Generate item, the I, item we can pass an I, and then an I in here. I, which is of type number. So now that we have an I, of course we need to the tag as also I, which is a number. This way, what we can do is to display which number we are actually currently visualizing, and it looks like it's not working. It's going to generate data. Should be visible. I don't understand why. Let's do JSON.stringify e undefined. What? Okay, E is not visible. So data is generate data, and returns generate item, which should return I. Let's call it number. So this one returning an I tag. For the number, generate item returns an I tag. And now when we go back to here, E is an I tag. E dot number should be visible. I mean, I don't see what's going on. What can possibly go wrong under the circumstances that we cannot see. Alright, now number is being visible. I'm not sure what was happening earlier. E dot number. So we can see that the items are actually visible correctly. So we can see from number 1, 0 to 14. We set the 15 elements, so things are okay. The style is not perfect yet, but we're gonna fix it later. Okay, so now what we need to do, the next thing to do is to have a function that is going to run the scroller. So we have our virtual scroller, and now when we scroll on this element, of course this element has to be scrollable. To be scrollable, what do we need? We need this element to have a total height that is the total height of the elements, which we said total height and then on scroll we have our we're going to receive an event E, and we are going to need a function that essentially is going to change this set padding height, which again maybe I'm going to change it the number, maybe we can call it scroll state. Alright, so we need a function in here which is going to take a number is going to take the current the current scroll position. So we need to run scroller element dot current dot scroll tab. It is not current target. Okay, now when I scroll, I should get in here a number. This scroll position is a number that is going to give us our position, our new position. So what we want to do, we want to calculate our const no top, const no bottom, and const view data. Let's start from the top. The top is going to be the scroll position so let's see, it's going to be the total size of the elements above the viewport by the row height. So it's going to be scroll position divided by row height, and we want to have a so these are the elements above, so these are the elements these are the elements above, so the scroll position divided by the row height is going to give us the total height of the elements. And then the next step to do is to take those items so these are the new bottom position is total height minus new top minus amount per item height. What's an item height? Row height. And view data is equal to the slice will be data dot slice of a start and end position. So the start of the element, what would be? Would be on top. While const end would actually be equal to well, it would actually be start plus the number of elements that we want to visualize, which we call amount, I think. Amount. So now what we can do a set scroll state top, no top, bottom, no bottom, view data. Why is complaining? I don't understand why it's complaining this thing. Because go view data. There we go. So now of course nothing is happening there. Let's see if there are errors in the console. Okay, so on scroll, run scroll. Let's see if the scroll position is actually called. No. So what am I scrolling here? I misspelled scroll. Okay, so let's Alright, so total height, run scroller. This should be how this one works, but apparently not. React on scroll. On scroll, we want to scroll this element. Unless I'm actually scrolling at the outside element. So what might be happening here is that our element is not being scrolled because it's as big as the viewport. So what I can do is maybe I can wrap it in an element, and then I'm going to give to this style equal to width by 100 pixel, margin 0, auto, height, let's say 300 pixels. So now still doesn't work. Why is across the outside? So what is happening here is happening that we are scrolling the other element, because we didn't have an overflow. Okay. So let's see. We have an element in here. Mhm. Okay, so what is happening here is that this total height number, it is actually incorrect because we already have the bottom plus the top that gives us the total height. So actually this element is actually already as big, so can't scroll because the page is actually what is going to scroll. So we need to set, here I was trying to, of course, limit the size, but this isn't something we actually have to do. Well, at least not in here. What we want to do, we want to set the style of this element so that it can be scrolled. So we're gonna put a size of 300 pixel. Let's put a bit bigger, 500. Width of 300 pixels, and then we want to overflow auto. So as you can see, the elements are scrolling correctly. Now the problem is that they set a size that obviously it's very of 30 pixels when the element is actually tall 19. So if I change row height to be a proper number, so 19, let's see, when the page refreshes, it should actually work better. Okay, it's not working so well. Why is it working so well? Let's see. Okay, so the top element, it seems that is not actually running smoothly like we expected. So let's see what am I doing here. Okay, because I'm actually dividing scroll top is actually equivalent to the top position. Bottom is equal to the number of rows. Let's have a look. Yeah, looks much better. 14. So we're actually seeing looks like our list is actually rendering fine without bottlenecks from the browser. And well, now what we can do, we can actually improve how this element works. We can of course adjust the styles, we can do a lot, but for the purpose of my demonstration I think that's enough. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.